Hey everybody, welcome back. My name's Ken.
And my name's Richard.
And we are going to continue our series, The Apostles' Creed, Part 6. But wait, there's more. Delightful theology. All right, Rich, I'm excited. This is going to be good.
This could be a good one.
Now we're getting to the really good part, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's been brilliant so far.
Yeah. All right. We covered the Apostles' Creed. Here it is in full. We're not going to go through it all again. The line we are covering today is, on the third day, he rose again from the dead.
Yes.
And of course, that means Jesus.
Yes.
That's who we're talking
exactly.
about.
Yes.
That's who we're talking about. So, Rich, you had said that you had found a super awesome resource, and I
have. So, yeah, what's really fun and exciting is I found a podcast called Cold Case Christianity.
Sweet.
And so I was listening through, and it was amazing. So it's a former cold case homicide detective.
Cool.
And part of it's his story on how he came to faith.
Right.
Using the skills that he used as a cold case detective, because where like the witnesses are dead, the people who reported it are dead. So how in the world do you get to the truth? So he uses those skills, all right, and he is able to see, he sees the truth, right? And so, which is just absolutely amazing. So, love the podcast, and then I found out that there were books and small group resources, and so recently I started a men's group at my house.
That's awesome,
and we are going through it. So there's 8 lessons.
Cool. Cool. Well, here is the book, and we put in the the little pull quote off of the dust jacket, so you can read that over. Cold Case Christianity by J. Warner Wallace. Awesome.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're talking about the resurrection today.
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
And so one of the things that he discusses in there, and he takes a bunch of this information. There's Dr. Gary Habermas, and he credits him as coming up with this, and then he truncates it even more and comes up with 4 minimal facts that has to do with the resurrection story.
Right.
Okay, and so and these will be agreed to by secular historians at that time, even if they're like anti.
Even if they're hostile, they're hostile.
Yes. They will admit these 4 things happen.
Awesome.
Okay, so
let's go through them then. So, the first one, Jesus died on the cross and was buried. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone. You see it written in the Roman records, and you see it in archaeology finds. You see it in Josephus and whoever.
Right.
Everyone agrees. Okay. Next. Jesus' tomb was empty, and no one ever produced his body.
Because if they produced his body, that would end the story.
Absolutely. Right? You know darn good and well if they had, they would.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Far and wide. Now this one's interesting. Jesus' disciples believed they saw Jesus resurrected from the dead. You want to talk a little bit about
I think that one and the next one tie together.
They are. They're kind of really hooked together.
Yeah, because they go and they share in their written records that they saw Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next one is the disciples. Jesus' disciples were transformed following the alleged resurrection observations.
Right.
And if we look at Peter, for example, before, who bravely ran away, right? And then afterwards, in Acts chapter 2, with the boldness that he has and preaching there, and they're willing to go ahead and die horrible deaths.
Right.
For the truth. All of them, but John.
Well, and they surely tried.
And they tried, and they tried to kill John and failed, right?
Yeah. Do you want to give them the quick lowdown on that story?
Fox's Book of Martyrs, where you go ahead and read that. It goes back with church tradition. I think try to boil him alive.
Yeah, they tried to boil him in oil.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like
seriously,
I cannot even imagine. I cannot.
Well, and so I mean, this is kind of like one of those Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego moments, because they're standing back going, well, we tried that didn't work. Just let's send him off to an island and we'll just get rid of him that way. That had to be a testimony to a lot of people too. Okay.
Yeah, this has never happened before.
No. Everyone always
dies when you fry them, deep fry them, right?
Yes. Deep fried apostle.
That's horrible. So anyway, all right. So those are the minimal facts.
Gotcha.
And so you want to go to our next slide?
Yeah. So what is this here?
Okay, so this is in the book, and then so what we want to do is we have the facts.
Okay.
So there's different explanations, and we're gonna look at the explanations. We're gonna look at the evidence. Okay. Yeah. Let's put on our investigators.
Yeah.
Detective cap, and go. Okay. So here are the facts. Mm-hmm. Do these explanations thoroughly answer the facts?
Okay.
I'm
going to zoom in on that. Hold on a second. Get it a little bigger here. Yeah. There we go. Now you can kind of read it a little easier.
Okay. I guess we're going to go through the possible explanations. But so Jesus didn't really die on the cross. The disciples lied about the resurrection. The disciples hallucinated the resurrection. And the resurrection truly occurred.
I mean, those are really your options.
Right. And then we did throw in another one that was in the book.
Bonus. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Here we go. Let's start on that first one. Jesus really didn't die on the cross.
Okay. And so you don't have to have a resurrection if he didn't really die,
if he wasn't dead, yeah.
Right. And so it is referred to as the swoon theory. Mm. It's like he got really close to death, like really, really, really close.
He passed out hardcore.
Yeah. And everybody thought he was dead. And then somehow, like when you put him in the tomb,
it's nice and cool in there.
It's nice and cool. And like he gets up and walks out.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, if he walks out, then you don't have to deal with the body because, and then, he can fool everybody. Well, and come up with a story. Jesus can just run around and say, I resurrected.
Yeah.
I maybe go run around and say, I was dead, but now I'm not.
Right.
Super weird. Mm-hmm. So that is the strength of it, is Jesus doesn't end up having to die. Now that's obviously, we have problems with that.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to poke a hole in the swoon theory, I mean, what's the weaknesses?
Well, the first weakness I can think of is those Roman soldiers' job was to make sure he was dead. That's their job. That's what they do. All the time.
They're professionals.
And they know when someone is dead.
Yes.
And when they pierced his side and blood and water flowed out.
Right.
I mean, I've heard the modern explanation medically that it's that your blood separates, and when you pierce it, then you get the two different parts of your blood because your blood has stopped flowing.
Right.
And it settles and separates. And so when they saw that, I mean, that's definitive proof that he was dead.
Yes.
Their lives were on the line to make sure he was dead.
Absolutely. Yes. There's so much, having to do with that. And then we're a little divorced from death now, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot more public executions and things going on, and just I think they're way more familiar with death.
Yeah, for
up close and personal than we are now.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing. Like, anybody who lives on a farm is much more acquainted with
death.
With death, if you have to deal with livestock and you have to deal with that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what they did all the time.
Absolutely. And
taking care of their sheep and their, goats and their chickens or whatever they had.
Yes.
And they know full well what dead is dead.
Yes. And just the sheer brutality of, I mean, we talked about it before with his back being, ripped open and whatever. And then suffocation. I mean, it's a death by suffocation.
Yeah.
There's all these different things there that if you lose that much blood, if you're wrapped up in tight linens as far as their burial custom, like if you basically, well, not mummified, but what we think of. I mean, as far as
you were just wrapped really hard. I mean, it's not like they gave him an IV,
right,
and then wrapped him up. Like, he was low blood,
yes,
completely beaten to a pulp, and suffocated and possibly broken heart, pierced heart.
Yeah,
I mean,
all you have to do is stick somebody, in the heart cavity, right?
Yeah.
With a sword, you'll kill him.
Yeah. If it's not this minute, it'll be in a few minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the thought of him being able to be dead for 3 days and then unwrap himself, open the door, pop out, ta-da! I mean, all of that.
Yeah.
There's way more weaknesses than there is strength. Yeah. All right, so what's the next possible?
The second one is that the disciples lied about the resurrection.
Yeah. There's they didn't seem like that they were expecting it.
Well, no, I don't think they got it at the beginning. They certainly didn't understand.
Right. So what do we have here? We still have the death. Mm-hmm. Okay. What do we do with the body? Mm-hmm. If they just lied about it, there'd be a body to be able to produce.
Right. Well, and that gets me to the idea of in the scripture we're told that the Jewish leaders said this deceiver said that after 3 days he was going to rise. Right. So we want you to make the tomb super secure.
Right. Because otherwise that would be even worse.
Right. It'll be even worse. And so the idea that the disciples could somehow get enough bravery to go to the tomb, overpower
the Roman guards.
How many Roman guards were there? I don't know how many there were for sure, because he says dispatch something. I don't know if it's a squadron or something or whatever. But it's not one dude. It's a bunch of dudes.
It's a bunch of dudes who are used to working together in a cohesive group, right?
Yeah. Someone comes, they all grab their shields, they're in a formation, and they will cut you down.
Yes.
No questions asked. So the very idea that...
And their lives are on the line.
Yeah. Well, and the whole point of when the Jewish leaders did that, it says right in the scripture that is why they did it, so that this would not be
that they couldn't,
a thing. They couldn't lie and say that they had gotten it.
Right.
So, yeah, this also falls flat. Why in the world would you lie about something and then continue to lie about it if it's going to cost you your life?
Yes.
That's crazy. I would not expect anyone to do that.
No, exactly. We talked about in the podcast on the resurrection, mm-hmm. we had the Charles Colson quote.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, there's no way.
No.
Because if the most powerful men in the world with Watergate couldn't hold their conspiracy together for, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
So how in the world are these other people going to be able to hold it together?
For the rest of their lives and go to their deaths with
Right, exactly. When there's no communication going on,
and
et cetera.
There's no benefit.
There's no benefit. No, because they'll want to save their skin.
Well, yeah, that's the reason I would say no. Oh, never mind. It didn't really happen. I'm going back fishing.
Unless you really, really believe it, mm-hmm. which is different than a lie. So that takes us to our next one.
Okay. The disciples hallucinated the resurrection.
Okay. Okay. So what are the strengths?
The strengths. Oh my gosh.
Because then they would believe it's true.
Right. So it would have to be a group hallucination.
That's a weakness.
So I don't find a strength of this. Because it doesn't seem possible to me.
No. No. And group hallucinations mm-hmm. are not a thing. And with people who are mourning, mm-hmm. right? I mean, there are some psychological things that can happen.
Sure.
But ongoing... Permanent, and we only hallucinated that he fed us on the beach.
Right.
We only, as a group, we hallucinated that Thomas, who said, well, I'm not going to believe unless I put my fingers in the holes in his hand and put my hand in his side, I'm not... they all hallucinated that, right?
Mm-hmm. And then they wrote 4 stories and corroborated each other's lies and hallucinations. So they all had the exact same hallucination in order to write their own gospel of it.
And it's Paul who says, and he appeared to more than 500 at a time.
Well, and he was taken away from them in the air. He like lifts it up off the ground into the air. I know that would be a significant, like, that would be burned in your mind. There's a lot of things I don't remember, like stuff that happens during the day, whatever. It happens every day, whatever. But if I was outside and a dude floated in the air, regardless of whether he was Jesus, I would remember that for the rest of my life.
Yes.
And I don't think that, like, everybody wouldn't see the same hallucination necessarily.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't.
I find no strengths. What were some of the strengths he listed? Did he list a strength of this argument?
No, I don't think there were any. I don't think there were any that were listed. I can't remember them being listed.
This doesn't.
I'd have to go back and look at.
This doesn't seem logical to me at all.
No, but it's one of those things that's tossed out. As
just as a like, oh well.
Well, it's there's a certain part where you appease them and go, well, no wonder the poor disciples. I mean, they all went to their death believing wholeheartedly that this was true,
right?
Because they had this mass hallucination. I mean, so they're not lying. They're
deceived.
They're deceived by their own brains and their own eyes. And so there wasn't any malice on their part. So, no, I don't think it answers it. We'll go ahead and
definitely not. And this next one is one that is also included in the book, you said, but it is not in that list that we showed on the screen. But this is another one.
Yeah, this one I liked as I thought about this.
And it says the disciples were fooled by an imposter.
Yes. Okay, so some of the strengths, and you and I talked about this before, and some of the strengths about this were like, because, the disciples, when they first saw the resurrected Jesus, were going, really? Where Mary, for example, like, what have you done with the body? Right? And so not necessarily that she got a good look at him, but until she heard him, like there's a little bit of standoffishness at first about Jesus. Missler does a great job of explaining this, because he goes back to Isaiah and was talking about like just how Christ is beaten. Jesus' beard was pulled out. Yeah. And so
I don't think anytime, have you seen those videos online where like a dad with a beard and then they shave and then they like show their face and then their kids cry?
Because like who is
you're not my dad.
Who are you? Who are you? If you've seen Jesus for 3 years, with a beard and all of a sudden no beard, or it's like no beard and then like scars, usually like what in the world? What is that?
Well, and it says in the scripture several times that like they didn't recognize him, or they were afraid to ask if it was him because they kind of knew, but they weren't sure.
Right.
And so, that is the only strength that I can give this argument. Like, okay, maybe he looks so different that you couldn't recognize him, and maybe that was the thing. But the bottom line is
the weaknesses are awful.
The weaknesses are awful.
So basically, they'd have to be conned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so now they've been with Jesus for 3 years, basically 24 hours a day. Okay. With that being said, to pull off a con, you have to have a person who has more knowledge than the person being conned. So you'd have to have somebody who knows way more about Jesus and all of his mannerisms, all of his everything, have the same voice, all the right different. Well, you'd have to know the stories. You'd have to. There's so much.
You'd have to know the inside stories and like things that they talked about in kind of like confidence.
Absolutely, and Jesus did miracles afterwards too, that it talks about. So. He has to be able to pull off what looks like miraculous as well. Just the amount of like, how do you fool someone that thoroughly? Right.
Well, and like you said, if it's somebody was going to pull off a deception like this, they would have to be so intimately involved from the beginning to know so much. And then, so let's just say at the resurrection, they decide they're going to fool everybody, dress up like Jesus and pretend to be someone else. But like, wouldn't everybody else, all the other apostles and disciples go, hey, where's that one guy that used
Yeah,
to
exactly.
be here?
Yeah.
I was like, where's
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, where's Bob?
Where's Bob? He's gone.
Yeah, the 15th, right? Or the 13th. The 13th when he was running around.
Yeah.
Yeah, where did he go?
Yeah.
Because this really sounds a lot like Bob, right?
Yeah.
Way more than Jesus, and now Bob's missing. So should we go look for Bob, right? So no, that's a huge problem. And I've gone through this before with people, and like, okay, so who else? Did the Romans steal it? Did the Jews steal it? Who stole it? And I did have this one time in Scotland, and the people who were telling me were about college age, right? And they go, it could have been trolls.
Wow.
Trolls live underground.
Sure.
Right? And so he's buried underground. Okay. So what we're looking at too, and I forgot to mention this, is we're not looking for beyond a possible doubt. We're looking in court, we're looking for beyond a reasonable doubt. We're talking about reason. Okay, to say that the body was stolen by aliens or the body was stolen by trolls.
Possible.
I don't know.
Probably not.
I can't imagine why. Right? Like there's no. It's outside. It's outside reason completely. Okay, and we'll go ahead and go with the next one.
Right. So if all those things are
the resurrection truly occurred, and I think that answers the questions best. Now that it does, of course, include the supernatural.
Yep.
And we live in a time where people want to poo-poo the supernatural. But there's a problem with that. Rationalism breaks down. Straight materialism breaks down. There's too many spiritual things out there. So the existence of any supernatural means there's supernatural.
Right.
Okay. For example, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, right?
Okay.
So he writes Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
All just logic. Okay. And you would think, well, then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle would have gone hardcore logic.
Right.
And just materialism. But he didn't. He got himself into all sorts of spiritism.
Oh.
Which isn't good, but I'm just saying, right? You have this rational mind putting this, like, I want to put rationalism forward and going, but as far as my own personal life, it breaks down, and I got to believe there's something else, and he's seeking something spiritual because he believes there's something spiritual out there, and I think most people will agree there's something out there. Now you do have some people who are like, I don't know, that just want to be hard. Like, look at me, I believe in nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have people on the other side. Look at me, I believe in everything. And so
anything
and everything. It's all of it. Because those are, I don't want to say those are the easiest positions to defend. Right. The least amount of thought can be spent holding those positions. But yeah, I have to believe that the resurrection actually happened. I don't have a problem with it, with there being the supernatural. I think there's enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just based upon all the miracles that Jesus had done.
Absolutely.
It's not as if any other thing is too hard.
No, it's not.
And if he is truly the God who created everything, merely speaking it, then nothing is too hard.
No, nothing is too hard. Nothing is too hard. Well, and it's absolutely amazing that he prophesied, like, how in the world he's going to die, that he's going to come back after 3 days. I mean, we had some supernatural spiritual things that are going on there. We already had him, saying, Lazarus, come forth, right? And so, God can already do miracles of bringing people back to life from the dead. So,
well, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of times, like, I look at CERN, let's just say, very academic, very scientific, particle acceleration and doing all these things. That's very material science.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet, there's something spiritual about it. Witnessed that on the front of their building, they have the statue of Shiva. They understand somehow innately that this is something more than mere physical phenomenon. There is something.
There's a spiritual
extra,
yes.
And they wouldn't necessarily call it spiritual, but there's something else that's going on.
There's something happening in an unseen realm.
Yeah, and I think they kind of even, like, the more you head down that road, eventually you find God and you find the truth. You find the spiritual universe that God describes that is not just a physical, material universe. There is more to it.
Absolutely.
So that's really cool.
All right.
Well, gosh, that was pretty great. I like that.
I like that.
That was a good one.
So hopefully it encourages you and strengthens you as you go ahead and think about these things. I mean, what we want to do is build up the believer, and for those who are new to Christianity or are seeking, we want to help you to be able to think, and maybe maybe not today, but encourage you to take steps toward like, can I follow Christ? Is there a reason to follow Christ?
Well, that's the thing. You owe it to yourself to do the investigation.
Yes.
You owe it to yourself to look into these things, because if what Jesus said about himself is true, then you're going to have to deal with him, and you might as well get to know him now.
Absolutely.
So rather than facing him later, that would not be cool. So, well, I think we're good. So if you, as always, if you heard us say anything stupid, remember, don't blame Jesus. That was our fault. And we look forward to seeing you next time. See ya.
Thank you.